welcome you all to the third segment of lecture 41. And in this segment, we'll be looking at what is actually the significance of having a general exception clause in an international investment agreement. So, there's essentially a conflict between two interests, that is host state's interest and investor's interest. And let's say the host state has obviously owes a duty to the general public to take measures to protect the environment, takes an environmental regulatory measure that has an adverse effect on investors' economic interest, and then there's a conflicting interest. Arbitral tribunal has to decide and then award compensation, right? So this is there. This is a tension that you would also find in trade disputes as well. So trade also, initially when GATT had come into force in 1947, that point of time, mostly there was focus on tariff, reduction of tariff. But in these days, you will find that WTO, the disputes that are filed in WTO relate to non-tariff measures as well. So there also the contest is there, trade measure and then trade measure for protection of an environment, and then the interest of the complaining members who had filed a dispute against challenging the trade measure. So the general exception in Article 20 sort of looks at whether the government should withdraw the trade measure. So how does a balancing happen in the context of World Trade Organization? So there Article 20 has a chapeau which lays down certain requirements that it should be non-arbitrary, unjustifiable, it should not be an unjustifiable discrimination, it can't be a disguised restriction, and it can't be a discrimination where the same condition prevail and all of that. So chapeau contains certain elements that has to be there, that can, if those elements are present, only then you can just successfully justify the trade measure even if it is in violation of other provisions of the GATT, right? So the legitimate goals that can be taken by a host state is also mentioned from point A onwards. So if you look at the individual subheadings, individual paragraphs or individual subheadings under Article 20, which talks about measure can be taken for protection of public morals, health, health is given under 20B, then 20G talks about conservation of exhaustible natural resources and all of that. There are certain words accompanying these legitimate goals. For instance, A and B talks about necessary to protect the public health, right? Then G has a word relating to. So in that context, the WTO has developed something known as necessity test, and so whenever a panel or an appellate body looks at balancing a trade measure and a legitimate goal, what they are trying to do is they will look at whether it is the least trade restrictive approach that was taken by the responding member. So least trade restrictive approach is a goal and something that is looked at by the panel or the appellate body. That may not be very relevant here in the context of international investment agreement. I would again take back you to the content that we discussed from lecture 20 to 25. We were talking about what is the approach of a tribunal while reviewing a regulatory measure. So there we had discussed many cases which reiterated that the tribunal is not here to second guess the regulatory authorities. The tribunal is not a super regulator who will review whether the actions of regulatory authorities are just, right? That's something we had already clarified. Moreover, the way that the nature of these measures, when challenged, what happens to these measures, that is completely different in terms of trade and in terms of investment. In terms of a trade regime, that the responding member had to either withdraw or modify the trade measure, right? So that's the consequence. But in case of investment regime, that's not the case. I mean, nobody questions the sovereign right of a country to take a regulatory measures. The question in terms of, in the context of investment regime is, how much compensation will the investor get? Only in terms of compensation, not about withdrawing the measure, right? So when that is different, if you model a general exception clause based on Article 20 of GATT, which starts with the line nothing shall prevent, right? So here nobody questions the sovereign right to enact regulatory measure. Then shouldn't the general exception clause focus more on nothing shall make the state to pay compensation? Shouldn't that be the starting line for a general exception clause that we find in international investment agreement? And moreover, the next question is, let's say if a tribunal looks at whether the measure is non-arbitrary, non-discriminatory in the context of general exception clause, isn't that the same analysis the tribunal will do while examining the allegation of violation of FET? What is the difference? There also for FET also it has to be non-discriminatory, it has to be non-arbitrary, due process of law had to be followed. Then I don't find any difference between an analysis that a tribunal would undertake for examining FET provision and also for examining general clause provision. So essentially, since the nature of the regime itself is different for trade and investment, exactly or verbatim copying a general exception clause from Article 20 of GATT or incorporating it into an international investment agreement, I feel it may not achieve much. There be a, you could just claim that there is a general exception clause in the BIT, but I'm not sure if in reality it would sort of strengthen the position of the host state to enact regulatory measures. In that context, a very useful guidance is shared by the scholar Camilla Martini. So she had referred to China-Colombia BIT and stated that the wording of general exception clause in that BIT seems to be more appropriate in the context of investment regime. So what is contained in China-Colombia BIT? Let us take a look at that. If we look at Article 12 of China-Colombia BIT, it clearly says that nothing in that agreement will be construed so as to prevent a party from adopting or maintaining measures intended to preserve public order, including measures to protect the essential security interest of the state, provided that such measures are applied where a genuine and sufficiently serious threat is posed to one of the fundamental interests of society, are not applied in a manner constituting arbitrary discrimination, do not constitute a disguised restriction on investment, are proportional to the objective they seek to achieve, are necessary and are applied and maintained only while necessary, and are applied in a transparent manner and in accordance with the respective national legislation. For greater clarity, nothing under this paragraph shall be construed to limit the review by an arbitral tribunal of a matter when such exception is invoked. Camilla Martini may agree with the way this is drafted. I mean, of course, it sort of gives you step-by-step guidance for an arbitral tribunal to review an environmental measure from the perspective of a general exception clause. But what we see here is generally, even this is, I would say that this is a measure that sort of deals with, that is again modeled on Article 20 of the GATT itself. So nothing shall prevent, I mean, I've just discussed about it. We are not concerned about the power of the host state to enact regulatory measure, but rather we are only concerned about whether the host state should pay compensation or not, right? So that is our focus in the context of an investment regime. Even in this provision itself, the tribunal will have a discretion while reviewing what amounts to fundamental interest of the society, what is arbitrary discrimination. So those are the words again that are not explained, right? So I would say that I'm actually building on the suggestion given by Camilla Martini. I would say that countries, when they negotiate a BIT, what they should do is they should carefully draft the general exception clause and should also talk about what, or should spell out what are the fundamental interests of the society. One, there is the factors that a country may give emphasis on differs from country to country. For some countries, environment takes a center stage, and for some countries a health measure may take a center stage, and for some countries it could be labor issues and all of that. So country may have a different different factors emphasizing different things. So in that sense, countries, if they list out what amounts to fundamental interest of the society, then in that case it makes lot of sense for reducing the discretion of the arbitral tribunal to limit the scope of the arbitral tribunal's discretion while interpreting what amounts to fundamental interest of the society. I feel it is a contracting party that should be in a position to say what amounts to their fundamental interest, what is their fundamental interest, rather than an arbitral tribunal saying, okay, this is something that is of fundamental interest to you, this is something that is not of fundamental interest to you. One example that I would like to highlight here is, if we look at Methanex case, Methanex tribunal stated that California is an environmentally conscious state. I mean, not in exact words, right? Something of similar thing was mentioned there. The first time when I read the award, I did not understand why would a Methanex tribunal state that California is an environmental conscious state, right? There are other states that may also be environmentally it will also think about environmental concerns and all of that. Why specifically California? But later on, after that, after watching many US TV shows and all of that, now I do understand the reputation that California has, that it's a very advanced liberal state with concerns for environment and all of that. So now I understand why Methanex tribunal referred to that. So that's again the point that I was trying to say. So many countries have different priorities. Something may be fundamental into protecting environment, may be a fundamental interest to one particular country, and that may come above labor standards, but for some other country the order may change. So it's actually better for the countries to list out the fundamental interest. In that case, the scope of the arbitral tribunal also gets restricted, the discretion of the arbitral tribunal gets restricted. That's one point. Secondly, I would also want to highlight, in this particular provision, the question of compensation is again not addressed. So maybe the country could probably draft the general exception clause by saying that it will clarify the question whether compensation had to be paid or compensation has not to be paid. That is something, if it is clarified in the general exception clause. So what the point that I'm trying to say here is, general exception clause again has to be tailor-made for an investment regime, rather than we mindlessly copying a general exception provision from the trade regime, right? So this is how I say, I mean, we're looking at the significance of a general exception clause. So since the consequence of after invoking the measure, what would be the consequence, that is not effectively addressed in the provision that we now find in the international investment agreements. Maybe in future, if it is a tailor-made general exception clause, then probably we could address the fact that whether compensation will be paid or not. But I cannot undermine the significance of a general exception clause. I am in favor of having a general exception clause in an international investment agreement, especially when there are when sometimes an environmental regulatory measure gets challenged before the arbitral tribunal. This is very essential. I mean, again, I'm referring back to the experience in Philip Morris case as well, when this absence of a specific carve-out was questioned. So there has to be a general exception clause, but what should be the content of a general exception clause? That probably we need. The contracting parties really have to take a careful look at it and draft it that will suit the investment regime. Okay, so let me conclude this segment. In the next segment, we will look at the prohibition and restriction clause. That's mostly related only to public health, but the measure may also have an effect on contribution to protecting the environment as well. So I'll discuss about that very quickly in the next segment. With that, we can conclude lecture 41. Thank you.